Hey, Robert.
Good morning. How's it going over there in New Mexico?
Morning. New Mexico. Good guess. Maybe I told you that already.
Yeah, just a little thing I was seeing in your bio that you had sent
Oh,
on a.
that's right. That's right. I guess I gave it all away too soon. Um, it's good. It's good. Bright and sunny as usual. We get a lot of sun out here.
Yeah, Santa Fe's been in the news a little bit lately, as
Yeah,
we all know. Uh,
I know. I know.
tragic
Yeah.
thing, tragic thing.
It's a shame because it was, the whole movie production effort was really kind of, putting Santa Fe on the map in ways that it hadn't been before. And then you have something like this and it kind of just derails things a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Um,
happened in the history of cinema too,
that's
probably
true.
more
Yeah.
recent years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just terrible, and you think like with all the safety protocols and everything, this would never even happen again. But then, I think it comes down to economics, just like any of these other businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're trying to cut corners, get things done on deadline.
Yeah.
These kind of
Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah. I mean, all these other, sort of ancillary facts are coming, well, not really ancillary, but these other facts are coming to light about how they were doing it on a low budget, and people were pissed because they weren't getting, the time that they needed off and so forth. So anyway, it sounded like a bit of a mess.
Happening here. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and we
Oh
have a
yeah.
huge movie industry here too.
Mm-hmm.
And they were threatening to strike. Hiatus was ready to strike because the hours are just insane.
Yeah.
Doing 16-hour days, you got to wolf down a sandwich while on
Yeah.
set.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where they film the Marvel stuff, right? In Atlanta.
A lot of that kind of stuff. They got Pinewood Studios on the south side of the metro
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Um, I'm on the northern end of the metro area. A lot of that show Ozark has
Oh
been
yeah.
recorded here.
Oh yeah. I know. I used to live in Atlanta actually for a number of years.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, from about when I was 8 to like, I don't know, 18 or 19, something like that. So I know
Oh,
it pretty well.
yeah, really. Now, where did you grow up in Atlanta?
In Marietta.
Oh, yeah, okay. On the other side of town, I'm in Peachtree Corners, which is near Norcross.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Peachtree
Um,
Corners is almost 10 years old.
That's right. It's sort of like it's sort of like a kind of a newer community, right? I mean, like kind of sprung out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, there has been a movement in the last probably 20 years or so, maybe not quite that much, but of incorporating cities.
Yeah,
Sandy Springs became a city.
right. That's right.
Dunwoody became a city.
Yeah, that's what's his name? Ossoff. That's his district, right?
Yeah, he's not too far away. He became the senator
That's
here.
right. That's
So
right. Yeah.
he's one of two
When he was
senators.
running for Congress, I think he was representing
Yeah,
Sandy Springs. Yeah.
right next door to where I'm at,
Oh,
actually.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, cool. Cool. Yeah. Are you a Braves fan?
Yeah, I really have become. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
Moved down here. I've been working in the news business for
Okay.
almost 33 years now.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I was an Indians fan pretty
Yeah.
much, but I've been here more than half my life now. So
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I'm not really a sports guy at all.
yeah.
And again, you don't have to be a sports person to kind of get caught up in the vibe of it, because when I lived there, I mean, the Braves sucked for a long time,
Oh yeah.
and then they got really good, and everyone was like rallying behind them and so forth, and it's just kind of this is kind of stuck with me for all these years. I've never really sort of outgrown that in a weird way. So now that they're in the World Series, it's kind of a real kick.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And I was here for all the other World Series appearances. Yeah, it really changed. I
Right.
caught the tail end of the really bad years. I used to be able
Yeah.
to sit
Right.
like right behind home plate when I was first here. And then like I was like
Right.
years in.
Right. Yeah. They couldn't give them away, man, back then. The
Oh
tickets.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
They gave us
Yeah.
tickets. They just wanted to just fill the seats for WTBS's broadcasts.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
Wow.
Anyway,
You're in
so
music though. How long have you been in music? Were you growing up here in Atlanta? Were you getting into that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I had bands in high school and stuff, and I played some of the clubs that are probably non-existent at this point, except for the Masquerade. I think the Masquerade still exists.
So I don't know if that's still standing over. I don't go that way very much,
Oh, okay.
unless I'm doing road races or something like that, and
Yeah.
we run by there.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I played in bands in high school, and then I went off to college, and so stopped obviously playing there. But yeah, I mean, ever since I was a teenager, basically, I've been into music, and here I am, hurtling towards middle age, if not already there, and I'm still doing it. So
that's very, very good. So what inspired you growing up? What were you into when you were over here?
oh gosh, like heavy metal, stuff like that, punk and that kind of thing. And yeah, yeah, stuff that I listen to now and I'm like, God, that's just terrible.
Into
So
like
bad on so many levels. Yeah, yeah.
well,
But
it's good.
I was an angsty teenager, like a lot of kids.
Yeah, you go
And
through
now
those.
I'm just an angsty. Now I'm an angsty adult.
It's funny because you go through those angst years. I wasn't really into punk and heavy metal growing up, but I went to school with a lot of kids who were into that. I had two older sisters, so we kind of got more into. I was more influenced by pop music than anything because they were into it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I took a long break for, gosh, I mean, I did it all through college and stuff, and then I took a long break for reasons I don't know, we may or may not get into. And then got back into it about 10 years or so ago.
Oh,
Yeah, and I haven't really stopped since. I mean, in fact, I probably go at it harder now than I did when I was a kid, in terms of just being regular about it and having a real work ethic around it, and as much as I can. I mean, I have well, maybe it's not obvious, but I have a day job that, takes up a fair amount of my time, and I've got kids and stuff. So, but any chance I get, this is where I am doing my thing.
that's awesome. Yeah, you got to have a day gig, and as you go into the business, because it's a rough business. I mean, to really break through, you're one of so many talented people I come across, through online. And the great thing is that the technology allows you to do what you're doing. But like so many can do it these days.
That's the problem. It's a double-edged sword, right? It's like it's been completely democratized, which is great, but on the other hand, it just creates this massive saturation of material out there, much of which is really good and worth listening to, but it's just impossible to take it all in.
Yeah, there is not enough time, and there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah. So speaking of, how did you come across me amongst the millions of people out there that are making music?
Yeah, you landed on. I mean, maybe this is, it's always the luck of the draw, how you come across things on Facebook or Twitter and those places.
Yeah.
It just pops up. I think when you do a boost, like I boost this podcast, I may just end up in somebody's feed and they're like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, cool.
It's total happenstance. That's what's so cool about social media and these kind of things. It's like, you stumble.
I suck at social media. I'm not regular at it at all, or active that much. But it's interesting to see. Maybe that should be motivation for me to kind of get back into the game and think, oh, it actually works.
Did you like boost yourself, like your page or something, and that's how you?
Well, I mean, I remember like during the pandemic, I got some pretty significant momentum around it because, as you know, the world just kind of came to a grinding halt, and so I found myself with a ton of time to be not only just putting out, developing music and writing music and producing it, but just actually, getting some regularity around the other aspects of promoting your work and so forth, which I hadn't really had before. And so I'm guessing it was probably part of that whole push,
Yeah, it's again a double-edged sword. Like social media is so targeted. So I've been doing this podcast a year and a half or so, and so Facebook knows I do this. So that's probably why I get targeted. So there's a real niche thing, and you're the kind of artist that I would speak with. Yeah. So how do I branch out from that? So we're so targeted. They target.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it seems like it's getting narrower and narrower in terms of getting. In terms of the way that the content is sort of directed towards you, or better or worse. I mean, obviously that's a big Pandora's box there, man. You start talking about social media and how it reads you and so forth. But anyway,
that's how we become so divided that way. Just like in all facets of life, everything is so segmented now. For TV, radio, paper, magazines, music, everything is just so. We're all in our own little bubbles here.
Yeah. And that's part of the problem, to be honest with you, why I've always struggled with sort of like the social media thing is it puts you in an environment. It puts me in an environment that I don't really care to be in, in terms of people mouthing off about this and mouthing off about that. And I try to, I try to kind of limit it to the work and the promoting of my work, but there's so much there's so much, noise out there. That's hard to do. You know what I mean?
Completely. So you had a hiatus from music. What caused you to have a hiatus from music and just...
Well, I got married, and for, I guess, a variety of, so I mean, I guess a couple of different reasons. Once I got out of school, I kind of went through a bit of a musical identity crisis. And I mean, it's funny. I don't know about you, but when I think about sort of the areas of sort of pop music that I'm aware of, there's like these big voids of like from year X to year X, where I didn't know what anything was, anything was going on in terms of the bands and so forth. And so from about, I don't know, the mid 90s to like, I don't know, 2010 or something like that, is a complete void for me in terms of like, what was happening musically. And I bring that up because that was sort of part and parcel of the identity crisis that I went, a prolonged one that I went through, and so so because of that, and because of the fact that I was getting my my day career established and so forth, and I had kids on the way and all of that, and to the extent that I had any creative time, I was actually putting it more towards like fine art and things like that, and painting and drawing and that kind of thing. I did that for a long time, and then since we're talking about it, my marriage ended up dissolving.
I've been there.
And what's that?
I've been there too.
Yeah. And dissolving is a polite way of putting it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I don't wish it on anybody, but
oh gosh, even under the best of circumstances, it sucks,
Exactly.
And it's funny, I can almost remember, I do remember it very vividly. Like, I remember moving out of my house, and I still had the guitars in the closet and stuff, right? And I'd probably played like 5 chords in 10 years or something, and I was grabbing my essentials, right? Stereotypical, sort of like throwing the suitcase on the bed and the whole deal. Not quite like that, but and I went to the closet and I was looking through stuff, and I saw the guitar cases, right? And I was like, I got a feeling I'm going to need this. I don't know, it was a coping mechanism or something. So I grabbed the guitar. It was my Telecaster. It was kind of like my go-to. Cool. And I brought it with me, and started my life outside, and my life beyond that, and so forth. And it's been a while now, so things have sort of settled back down, and and obviously I'm on much more sort of stable footing than I was back then. But in any event, that was sort of what regenerated. It was really out of necessity, out of sort of just some sort of anchor, some form of stability that would help me kind of navigate through that, and so I started noodling around on the guitar, and my cat is making
I got one outside, and next door there's a cat that's very clingy to me, and I've been working from home like half the time.
Yeah,
this cat knows I'm in here. She's coming in. She sleeps next to me while I'm working. It's great.
It's a cool cat as far as cats go, but he kind of gets in everybody's business. But anyway, so I started noodling around on the guitar, and a lot of these sort of these ideas and so forth that I had way back when started kind of coming back to the fore, and so I started just kind of just working on them, and then I was like, oh man, these are actually turning into songs, and then I guess they're going to need lyrics, so okay, I'll start writing lyrics, so I started writing lyrics, and then, well, wait a minute, I need a band on some of this stuff, I need some bass, I need some drums, and so forth. Well, I was like, well, shit, there's no one around here playing bass or drums. I guess I'm going to do it, So, and I actually had a drum set from way back when. And so I got it out of storage, and I started, and at this point I had sort of graduated, sort of back into the house. And so I had more space and so forth. So I got the drum set up and just started building these songs out. Right. And then of course, the big sort of like leap of faith was, oh God, someone's got to sing these things, And again, I was like, oh, there's no one else in the room. I guess I'm doing it,
Yeah, tag, you're it.
Yeah. And so, and mind you, we talk about sort of like this void between like when I stopped music and when I restarted. And as you know, I mean, the way that you made music within that 10-year span completely changed, you know, I mean, in terms of using, you know, digital audio workstations and so forth. And I knew nothing. I didn't know anything about that, you know?
Yeah.
And all I knew was the last time I used to make music is we had a little 4-track thing, you know, and we would record on that. And so I basically found the, you know, the equivalent of that, like a tiny little sort of Tascam 4-track thing. I still have it somewhere,
Cool.
just for memories purposes. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had like that and had built-in mics and stuff. So I was like moving it around, putting it in front of this amp, putting it in front of this amp, putting it like in the middle of the room to get the drums and so forth. And so I started just making these albums. They weren't mixed. They were nothing. I mean, they were just like basically garage band recordings, you know, which can be cool, right?
Sure,
if they're done properly. So I did that. I put out some of the stuff is still out there, but a lot of it's so, you know, looking back, it's so sort of primitive that I pulled it down. I'm embarrassed by it, you know, and the songs were like really long, like 8-minute songs, and like, well, actually not that long, but some of them songs were pretty long, and the lyrics were all very abstract and stuff, and it was all very mysterious, and it was cool though. I really dug it, you know. And then I just got, over the years, I just got more and more sophisticated, you know, in terms of the equipment I was using. And then I was like, okay, man, I better get a real mix engineer on this stuff, you know? So I started working with mixing engineers and so forth. And then finally kind of getting into, you know, the DAW stuff, like, you know, Logic and working in that and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where I am now. And so, you know, over the course of these, I don't know, 10 years or so, I've just been churning out music and hopefully getting better at it in terms of both the material itself, in terms of what I'm writing, and also just the production.
Neat. So you're on all these instruments. You taught yourself all these instruments.
Yeah.
Guitar. You do piano as well, keyboard.
I said to do piano is probably the right way to describe it. I wouldn't say I play piano. I would say I do piano, meaning, you know, if I want a couple of chords here or some textures, then yeah, I might do that. But I can't sit down and play a piano song per se. So it's more of just it's almost like a percussive. I mean, the piano is interesting. It's a hybrid between percussion and, you know, and a tonal instrument. And so I use it kind of in that fashion as like just a texture, you know, because that's all I know how to do. And it works pretty well. Or like if I want to build out a sort of harmonic line or something, I'll do it sort of like, you know, line by line, like, okay, this is the first line, I'll record that. And over the top of that, I'll do the, you know, the third on top of it or whatever, just to create some harmony and so forth. But that's about the extent of it.
So what did you learn first? Did you teach yourself guitar?
Guitar, yeah. Yeah, like a lot of kids, you know. Yeah. And, you know, I'm kind of you know, kind of jack of all trades, master of none, you know. But, you know, I play to my abilities for whatever it's worth. And I feel like on the whole, I'm able to sort of bring something together, you know, that is good, that I'm proud of. But, you know, I always sort of fantasize, man, what if I had this player on drums, you know, when I was recording, or what if I had this guitar player? Oh, it'd be awesome. You know, I have my sort of like my fantasy lineup, you know, of different musicians and so forth. And so as a matter of fact, on the stuff I've been working on recently, I actually have sort of like been outsourcing some of the drumming and like sort of particular things like, you know, pedal steel and things like that. So I'm starting to sort of bring more people into the collaborative process, which is always good.
So coming to your solo recording career, when did that take off? What was your first like official album and from there on?
I guess it depends on how you define album. I mean, in terms of like an album that was sort of mixed and mastered and promoted sort of in a real sort of, I don't know, legit way. I mean, I guess that was probably 2016 when I put out Dynamite Bouquet, which is kind of like this, you know, alt indie rock thing. But prior to that, I'd put out, you know, different releases and so forth that, again, were just done very, very primitively, that at the time I considered albums. Now looking back, I'm like, those are not albums.
Well, these days, I mean, really, honestly, people are just putting out singles. It's just not even worth trying to put out a whole thematic album because of the digital universe now.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I've explored that, and just because of the way that kind of create my stuff and the way that I rely on others to help me in terms of mixing and mastering and so forth, from a cost standpoint and from a time management standpoint, it makes more sense to kind of continue to consider them as wholes, as a set of songs as opposed to singles. Yeah. Just because, if you're mastering an album or even mixing an album, you want to have a certain cohesive elements, throughout. And that's harder to do, I think, when you're doing it sort of piecemeal like that, unless you have sort of the wherewithal, both in terms of like people around you and resources to sort of like do it that way and say, okay, well, I'm going to bring in producer X for this track, and they'll come back for the next one. I mean, I don't have that option. So.
Yeah, you're really cranking out the material though. So where are you getting all this inspiration? It's just the timing. Is there some kind of magic to the sauce to your secret there?
I don't know. I wish I knew what that was. I mean, I feel really lucky in the sense that, well, I don't know. I guess you're talking about sort of like inspiration and perspiration and all of that, and there's a couple of quotes that I always got to roll out. Like there's that Chuck Close quote where he talks about how inspirations for amateurs, artists get up and do the work kind of thing, show up and do the work, which I guess is a way of saying, yeah, you can be lucky enough to sort of like, have these ideas fall out of the sky, but that's a very rare and brief moment in time, and that's great if you can capture that, which I try to do basically any chance I get. But then you really got to put in the work to kind of like just bring it all to life and bring all the parts together, Sure. And so, people ask me, are you a singer-songwriter? I'm like, well, first of all, I would flip that. I would say I'm a songwriter-singer because I'm not really a singer first. But I guess I'm more of a song maker, because the writing is it's not as though I sit down like, you hear these sort of really famous songs that, people wrote in 10 minutes or whatever. That's never really happened to me in terms of like soup to nuts, finishing an entire song. It's very piecemeal, but to get back to your question, the inspiration, it just comes from living, man. It just comes from experience and just being out in the world, and I can't say that I'm the kind of artist that sort of like, here's something on the bus that somebody said, oh, that's a great line, I'm gonna use that to start a song. I don't really do it that way. It's more, I don't know, just kind of navel gazing, just sort of like just brooding on things, and that was easier to do when my personal life was in a more sort of, turbulent state. In that sense, yeah, I did have sort of like real raw material there to work with, just from personal experience. But as things have fortunately gotten more stabilized, I've been able to sort of approach things more from the outside and think of more in terms of characters. And okay, well, here's a situation, I'm going to write about how this person would feel and how that person would feel, and so forth, in the more sort of songwritery kind of way, that you're telling stories. And so partly out of necessity, because I've sort of, that's just kind of, I need to write about something, I'll just imagine something to write about, so I don't know if that answers your question. That's kind of a, I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of always hard to pin that down, say, oh, this inspiration just comes from maybe my environment. I mean, obviously being in New Mexico, that's got to be inspiring in and of itself. And even the bad stuff, I don't know if you have great examples of that, like even the more unfortunate things that happen in life can really turn out to be great, fodder for music.
Right. Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I would say on balance, my stuff tends to be a little bit on the darker side, just lyrically and kind of sentimentally and so forth. But what's really ironic is during the lockdown of COVID and so forth, they actually got happy. They were actually like, and a lot of the songs on the Tomorrow Never Fades are about this being in this space where, for the first time in I don't know how long, I sort of felt like, oh man, I'm going to be able to, I got to a place where I was content in the sense that I was able to, I knew that I had this sort of advantage of time on my hands in the sense that I could work on this song, and then guess what? I'm going to be able to work on it tomorrow as well, and really enjoy this moment as opposed to sort of some other big distraction, kind of landing in my lap and sort of taking me away from it. So the songs, generally speaking, were a lot more positive, which is weird considering all the negativity and the bad stuff that was going on, within the world at the time, and still is.
Yeah, I feel like there's like kind of a Tom Petty vibe on Tomorrow Never Fades. It's
yeah.
I feel like I feel like You're So Bad. It's like,
yeah,
I could feel that. Oh, that brings back memories.
Yeah. Oh, cool, man. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's an honor to be associated with a name like that.
Oh,
good, man.
What a catalog. Gosh, just obviously a major influence. You have a few other major influences. You seem like a combo between, Petty and a few others. So
yeah. And getting back to your question about sort of what inspires me. And a lot of times I'll just hear something that somebody does that I wouldn't necessarily, be a fan of per se, but out here and be like, oh, that's really interesting. That's cool. That's an idea, even stuff that my kids listen to, I'll hear some stuff and, oh, that's an interesting chord progression. I really like what they did in that production, over there. And so again, it's just about sort of being present and just soaking stuff up, and paying attention and just being responsive to stuff that's out there, because there's a lot of it,
Great collection of EPs, LPs. You got great. I look at your covers. I mean, I love the Tomorrow Never Fades cover.
Oh,
and I just look at some of these Into a White single and all of your days. It's really cool. I mean, you just got like really cool. You must have some great artists who work with you on your covers for these things too.
Oh yeah, actually, that's me.
Wow. Well, you know what though? You're probably like you've mastered all these trades. I mean, this is all artistic stuff here.
Yeah, I don't know about master, but I certainly work at it. Yeah.
I'm kind of in that way too, because I'll do a little Photoshop. I mean, master. Yeah, not really master, but just like you're into all this stuff. You're a Renaissance person that way.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Get it.
That's definitely. So you've been recognized quite a bit in New Mexico for like recognitions and accolades and stuff.
Yeah. They have every year they have the New Mexico Music Awards, which are, I call them the NAMMYs. They're sort of like New Mexico's version of the Grammys, Cool. And over the past couple of years, I've been able to pull down some hardware, as they say, for I don't know. Here I Am, I think, was one I got, was best indie song or something, and then there was a couple off of an album called V12, I'm the One I Couldn't Be, and Take Back My Heartbreak. So yeah, I put throw my hat in the ring pretty much every year when it comes to that stuff. I don't place every year, but it's fun,
Yeah, good track on there.
Go ahead, sorry.
You have a good track on there called Here I Am. That was just a big standout.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I like that one. There are a few that it's funny. There's a handful that I go back and listen to. I'm like, yeah, I still like that. But the majority of them, like, I would totally redo that if I were, go back, I would redo that again. But then I'm like, I don't have time for that. I'm just gonna make something new.
I think every artist goes through that, though. They could be their own worst critics in that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Do you like
part of why, I mean, the awards and thing and so forth, are they don't change the sort of the way you work and your mentality and your sort of your focus around it. I mean, but they help in the sense that and this sort of speaks to my fragile ego, I don't know, but they're validating in a way, because for someone like me, I'm just, holed up in this room, just cranking away on stuff. And you sort of, after you're, you spend so much time and effort and so much of your person working on these things. And sometimes you're like, why the hell am I doing this? Who cares? And every now and then someone says, oh, I care, and that kind of just keeps you going. It's sort of sustaining in a way.
I always say that about all my work too. It's like, is anybody paying attention? It's like, I like on this though, to promote people and say, hey, they're out there. There's so much stuff out there. Give them the spotlight, and who knows who could stumble on it and get more of an audience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So tell me about your endeavor here. I mean, how did you come about?
Yeah, I mean, this was totally inspired by the pandemic. So now I have been doing video production as an editor producer for CNN here in Atlanta.
Oh, cool.
And in more recent years, I've done features for what was the airport network that's now defunct.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some stories on some artists on my own. I did a story on a guy who makes cigar box guitars who lives over here in Marietta. And he was featured on Ozzy and Jack's travel show on A&A. So that's where I found him. It was a great interview. I interviewed a guy who's in Billy Joel's band, who was in a cover band in New York, just happened to be in the right place at the right time and actually joined the real band. Yeah, so went over to SunTrust Park, now it's Truist Park, and interviewed him before the show. Things like that. So I was able to do that for them. And so that went defunct. And then the pandemic hit around, this all happened around the same time. Yeah. It was like, all these people are coming at me saying, hey, can you do a story on me? Can you do this? Can you do that? I was like, I really don't have an outlet, but there's all this, we've got this technology here. Yeah. So why don't I just create a podcast and just invite you on, and let's just do straight talk and not do a fancy video or anything like that. Just like, let's just promote what everybody's doing during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Live performing went more virtual.
Right.
So folks like you are just, you're holed up in your house is creating. It's like, this needs to be shouted out to the world.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I'm certainly glad you're doing it. I'm sure others are as well, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, there are a lot out there in that same situation. They've got their home studios, and now, like we said, everybody can get a hold of this equipment at a pretty good price.
Yeah.
And you can go off and do your own albums, and you were lucky enough to get an engineer to do what you're doing and make it sound really good.
Yeah, and even that's done all remotely now.
People are just trading files.
Basically, yeah. Even though these guys are, basically in town, and Santa Fe is pretty small. I basically I'll upload stuff to Dropbox. They'll pull it down, do their thing. And then upload a mix and so forth. And every now and then, if we're doing sort of final edits and so forth, then we'll do like a live session wherein I can actually see what they're doing, on screen and so forth, and playback stuff, and we'll edit stuff in real time. And that's kind of interesting. And again, that was, I don't know when that sort of all came about, but I have to believe it was in the past couple of years, technically, from terms of the technology.
Yeah.
And even the guys that, the other players and so forth on some of these newer tunes, that's all done remotely too. Like I'll send him like for the drummer guy, I'll send him a scratch track, with some vocals and guitar to a click, and he'll basically be like, okay, I'll do 3 different versions of this, and let me know what you like, and then he's so good. I'm like, I pretty much like all of it.
So amazing though how you could do all this digitally. It's such a far cry from the old days. And I messed around with audio editing and the real tape. I'm like, that was horrible. It was like, I know you had to be a real true artist to have to deal with that and be a technical genius, but now you can be a technical genius in another way. And I think it's so much better just in the digital world.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not, just generally speaking, I'm not especially tech savvy. I'm as tech savvy as I need to be, basically, to get what I want done. And so I have to bone up on these programs and figure out how to work stuff. And I've got the basics down, but that's about it. I'm certainly no expert, and so I'm always amazed at the guys that do the mixing and so forth in Logic or Pro Tools or whatever, and there's like
incredible
8,000 plugins, for just 8,000 reverb plugins, and it's like, God, I'm just the prisoner of options. I wouldn't even know where to start, so you make the decision for me, because I'll never get to resolution on any of this stuff, so that's partly why I do it. It's like, it'd just be a rabbit hole for me,
Oh yeah. Even video programs, we have After Effects and
right.
And it's, I know quite a bit into that. I would say I'm in the intermediate area, but you can go on and on and on. That is an endless program, Adobe After Effects.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Pro Tools is that way too. I dealt with an audio designer on a special I worked on, and we had a scene in a restaurant where we did interviews, and it was noisy. I was like, I could do only so much like an audition, but this, I put it through Pro Tools, and like, oh my God. It's amazing how nice he made that sound.
Yeah. It is pretty amazing. It's just so intimidating. Those kinds of things are so intimidating for me, because again, I feel like there's so many different options that I would never get to the point of closure, where it's like, this is done. It's in the bag. I'm completely, content with it. Because I just know that there's a million other things you could have done with it. You know what I mean? So for that reason alone, I just sort of like, and I guess it's also like, it would distract me from the actual creating of the content itself. Right. Because if I'm, for example, I would just much rather, plug in my guitar to my Vox down here and just record that, and rather than plug my guitar directly into, into the DAW through the interface and be messing around with, again, 5,000 different tones,
Yeah.
I ended up spending 3 days on that as opposed to actually 3 days I'm working on the song and creating it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Really amazing. The point you got to just put it to bed. Like, let's get this out there. I mean, I can go on and on with this. So you've been on social media. Are you on Spotify? All those Pandora?
Yeah, I'm on Spotify. Yep. Yeah. Bandcamp, SoundCloud, Reverb Nation. I have my own website, obviously.
Do you get into the streaming numbers? I know some artists who are just like obsessed with that. It's like, I wouldn't know to have any time. I mean, I don't even know who is watching what I'm doing here. So it's like, I can't get into that.
Yeah, I think if they were a little bit higher, I probably would. But generally speaking, no. If you have a certain sort of type of Spotify account, like I think it's an artist page or something like that, then you do get these analytic reports, which are kind of interesting because they kind of they break down like, oh, someone in Germany was listening to my stuff. I had no idea, And I think the intent behind it is it helps you market your stuff. Like if you're touring or something, oh, people are really digging my stuff in Sweden or whatever. I want to make sure I go to Sweden, or females between the age of 35 and 45 are really digging this song, so you can get a little more, again, just like the social media stuff, you can kind of really get much more targeted with it. And so it's useful in that regard, mainly just out of idle curiosity, because, oh, that's interesting. Someone in Australia was checking out my tune, it kind of just makes you feel like you're, I don't know, just your stuff's actually more widespread than you might imagine,
That's true. That's true. And music's this universal language. So yeah, you could be heard overseas. Like, wow, didn't know this person in Russia really likes what I'm into. That's the great thing about music. It's just like, it sounds, goody two shoes and everything, but it really does. I mean, it's totally universal.
Yeah. And, I could see how that was really valuable. It's funny. I think about, again, I have my fantasy studio band. I have my fantasy touring band, and I'd be like, oh yeah, man, we should go on a European tour. That kind of get carried away with things, but yeah.
So are you into live performing? Have you been doing, play coffee houses in New Mexico or?
No, I don't. I guess by as a matter of practicality, I've just become a recording artist. And again, that gets down to just the time involved, and the time that I do have and how I want to spend it. And I mean, Santa Fe is a great town. I love living here, but it's not exactly it doesn't necessarily have a robust music scene per se, I wouldn't say. I mean, if I was starting a band and I wanted to kind of break through and be playing a lot of live gigs and so forth, I would not pick Santa Fe to come and do it. To me, it's like performing has always been like a completely different animal, in the sense that, I could prepare for that. I could, get a set down and like be practicing and so forth. And for those kinds of things, but for what, right? I mean, so like, I would spend all that time where I could be actually working on songs, which is what I like doing, preparing for a performance, to go to a coffee house and play for 3 people, or whatever.
Totally.
It just doesn't seem like a especially constructive use of my time, If I had more time, if I didn't have, the proverbial day job, then yeah, I would certainly be doing that, because I'd have enough time during the day to create the stuff, and then I'd actually have, the balance of that time to, work on getting the live thing together, but I'm just not in that position right now.
Yeah, that's true. So how long did it take you to collect all this great equipment there? Was it just piecemeal? Did you have to spend a lot of money at once, or
No, yeah, it was piecemeal. It's piecemeal. I mean, I had I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've got guitars that I've collected over the years. And my most recent addition is this Gibson J45, which I've been salivating over for a number of years, and I finally pulled the trigger on that and got one, the red one. And I've got a couple of hollow bodies and stuff that are I play every now and then that are just require a lot of maintenance and so forth, because they're
Beautiful, yeah.
They're vintage instruments. They don't stay in tune and all kinds of issues, but just cool to have, and play every now and then. They have some interesting sounds.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
really nice equipment in there. Yeah. Piano, a lot of guitars.
This 48 Gibson hollow body.
Beautiful,
which is actually great for distortion and so forth. Oddly enough, because of the P90s here, has a really thick, beefy sound. To the extent that I don't do that often, but when I do, this is it's like when I drink beer. It's like when I need distortion, I use.
Get with the old Gibson. That's nice. Wow.
So yeah, and then I got the drums. I've had that kit for a few years. And I had a black one that I gave away to there's an art school here in town, Arts High School, where my daughter and stepdaughter go, and they
nice.
Yeah, and they have a big music department. So to the extent that I'm not using stuff, I give it to them. Like I donated a drum set, a couple old guitars that I don't play anymore and stuff. So
great idea. Great idea. You got a nice mic sitting up there too. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, man. I guess I'm sort of like, I'm not a total gearhead or like an equipment junkie or anything. I don't have thousands of guitars, but I have more than the average bear, I guess.
Yeah, that's really good. So, and you've been doing some music videos too. That's been popping up too. And
yeah, I did a couple. Again, this is sort of like last year. I did a couple of sort of homespun videos. One of which was basically sort of me just putting all this stuff together and sort of showing me doing the different things. And then I had one for a song called "When It's True" that I did. That was on Same Morning Light that was much more sort of atmospheric and so on, kind of mellow. And so I'd love to do more, but
yeah, and that takes dealing with that whole other side, dealing with video directors and getting all that. That's the whole layer.
Well, that was another thing I had to sort of learn, is like how to edit the video and put it all together, and so on. So
so you're editing as well?
Yeah. I'm kind of doing it all, man.
Wow. Yeah. I so enjoy video editing, and it
sounds like that's what you do, right?
Yeah. And
okay, I'm hiring you for the next one.
Yeah, I could do it. Gosh, I've been in music videos and I haven't worked on one, but I've always admired them from afar. It's just, I've been into it since I was a kid.
Yeah. Wow. Cool.
Really, really enjoy that. You have some good cinematography. So are you hiring somebody for that? Or are you doing that as well?
Yeah. Just me and my iPhone, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Looks good. That's the amazing thing. I mean, it's like you don't need like $35,000 camera anymore.
Not anymore, no. Or a $3,000 a day, recording studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Like you said, it's just like everybody can do this now. Back in the day, I started out in Super 8mm filmmaking, and like very few people had cameras and projectors, and we did some editing with the Moviola, and you have to, I'm dating myself, but you're cutting it and splicing and all of that. And so few people had the time and the patience. Not so much that you need to have a lot of money to do that, but you couldn't do much quantity with that because every reel was only like 3 minutes.
Right.
50 feet of film for every cartridge.
Right. Yeah.
Nowadays, little kids could go out there and become, really the next Spielberg by just using their iPhone.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there are a couple of times that I'm like, I'm trying to edit this thing on iMovie and stuff. Hey, I'd ask my kid for how to do certain things. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I have a 23-year-old daughter who, was seeing what I was doing, and she got into it when she was back in high school and made videos and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, mine aren't quite there yet, but they're getting to the tail end of high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you're
Yeah.
thinking about college and all
Oh
that
yeah.
on the horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. That's on the front burner right now. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
keep them in state, please. But my daughter went up
Well,
to South
yeah.
Carolina. So
Up to where?
South Carolina.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's the thing, though. There's not. I mean, first of all, they just want to get out of New Mexico because they think New Mexico is lame, which I probably would too if I was 17 or whatever. But and there just aren't a ton of options.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to do. I think they're gonna end up more than likely they're gonna end up going out of state somewhere. So yeah, that's a little financially nerve-wracking, but we'll see.
This is what happens with kids, though. Where I grew up, I was like, I got to get out of Cleveland. This is just like, I just happened to end up down in Atlanta. But my daughter grew up here in Atlanta and was like thinking Georgia's lame. If it's backward, it's lame. So she's been up in Massachusetts the last 2 years.
Massachusetts, cool. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, I don't know. I guess unless you are raised in like New York City or something, it seems like most people are sort of like, yeah, wherever I grew up sucks. I want to get out and do my own thing. I think that's sort of like part of being young, right? And sort of casting your identity. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of kids who I grew up in, but then there was a whole contingent of people who just never got out of Cleveland. It's just like nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's just it's comfort to them.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? That's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yes. I remember when they got it and when they broke ground for it, which I don't think I was up there when they broke ground, but I came up there for the opening show in '95. And that was a real treat. It was a long show, just like one artist after another.
Yeah.
John Mellencamp, Johnny Cash was there, some members of Bon Jovi, Springsteen, those people. It was just like incredible. I was there for like 8 hours at that old stadium.
Wow. Yeah. I've always wanted to go there. And there've been times when I've kind of flown, kind of breezed through Cleveland just for work or whatever. But I've never had an opportunity to kind of really just, check it out and savor it.
It's really nice. And I'll do the favor of the Cleveland Convention and Visitors Bureau and say it's a great place to go visit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they keep inducting every year, as you know, and more artifacts go in there.
Right. I love watching the HBO. It's the HBO ceremonies, right? Yeah.
Every year, I think.
On the other hand, it's sort of like, I mean, I guess as certain established artists, start, their careers get longer and longer, and they've been doing this. Then then it kind of makes sense to sort of graduate, like 9 Inch Nails, for example. I remember when 9 Inch Nails was like a brand new band, and then, they got inducted. But there's a part of me that's sort of like, I mean, aren't we going to run out of people that are sort of like worthy of being nominated at some point? Absent people like revolutionary, acts like, Trent Reznor or whatever. Or I don't know, I can't think of another recent audition. Nirvana, I guess, or something.
Yeah. You don't think of them as being like, a classic band, but they've been, they came out, 20 some years ago, almost 30 years ago.
Right. But I just sort of wonder, especially also what's interesting is you think about, how the music business has changed and so on, and how, again, it's much more segmented. And, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and he talked about how Dave Grohl was like the last real rock star. Right.
Yeah.
And I thought about it for a minute. It's like, well, in a way, he's kind of right, because I'm not sure that the music business is really sort of set up in such a way to generate that kind of attraction around a singular artist that is not making music on a computer, entirely. And is a consummate entertainer and performer and recording artist, in and of themselves. And so they just, I mean, I guess, it's curious. I'm just curious to see how that evolves over the next 10 to 15 years in terms of who starts graduating into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not that that's the be all end all of being a legit musician by any means, but it's just an interesting, like with all the other sort of ways in which the music industry has changed over the past, 10, 15 years. That's another area where I sort of feel like, I'm interested to see how that all sort of develops. You know what I mean?
It is. It is. It's an ever-changing, fluid business.
Yeah.
Tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. And they started to, some people sort of debate this. They started to branch out and include a lot of people that aren't quote unquote rock and roll. I know that's kind of an academic debate. I don't have any strong feelings about that per se.
Where do you draw that line? I mean, Joan Baez. I mean,
yeah, right. Right. Great, cool artist, right? Worthy of the accolades, but why don't you just call it the Popular Music Hall of Fame or something?
Right.
That would make more sense, or again, no discredit to their achievements, but still.
Yeah. Where do you draw that? It's so fuzzy where that, I mean, obviously she was the basis for a lot of great, rock music,
right.
But yeah, where does that line? R&B artists as well. Should there be an R&B Hall of Fame? No, right. Go back to segmenting again.
Right. I know. Crazy.
Cool. Well, it's been great speaking with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Definitely. And visit Atlanta. Yeah. Maybe you try to do a live act here one.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of I had family and so forth that lived there for a number of years, and they've sort of dispersed to different parts of the country. But for sure, man, if I ever hit the road,
no doubt about it. I'd love to see you in New Mexico. Gosh, it's just so beautiful out that way. I've been through Albuquerque. I was there when that's about an hour plus south of you. Yeah. Beautiful place. I remember I was a kid going through there.
Yeah. It's cool, man. I really, it's they call it the land of enchantment for good reason.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, best wishes and on your new release as well. Good deal.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Take care. Have a good one.